Good afternoon. Let me begin by joining all friends of Lili, both here and those watching online, in expressing our heartfelt sympathy to all of Lili's family, especially, of course, to you, Karen, to your 3 children, Lili's grandchildren, Corey, Daniel, and Kaylin. And Lili was also blessed with a young great-grandson, Asher, and also to Deirdre, Lili's stepdaughter. Karen, Lili's grandchildren, great-grandson, and Deirdre is the loving and much-beloved family which embraced and encircled Lili in life. Although in recent years, maybe oceans and time zones created a physical distance between Lili and her US family, technology through FaceTime allowed them to see each other, speak to each other on a daily loving basis. I'm sure that, like all Shoah survivors, in spite of losing family and friends, home and homeland, childhood and early formal education, Lili would wish not to be remembered, to be defined only by her personal losses and suffering in the Shoah, but rather for her love of family, her love of life, her love of her childhood town, Krakow, and her enduring appreciation of the righteous Gentiles who risked and often sacrificed their lives, endeavoring to save Jewish friends, Jewish neighbors, and often Jewish strangers during the war. Lili's talks and the plaques in their memory which adorn this cemetery that she facilitated have given many of those righteous Gentiles a much deserved afterlife. You all, I'm sure all of you, knew Lili so much better than I. I met Lili just once, as my wife and I sat next to her at the most recent of the 45 group annual gatherings and dinners. My wife's parents, like Lili, were Polish Jewish survivors of the Shoah. My parents were Jewish refugees from Nazi Europe. There was so much to talk about. But Lili wanted to talk about life, not death, about now, not yesterday. And she did so eloquently, passionately, wisely, with a charming feistiness and impressive daring. I would love to have spent more time with Lili. Wouldn't we all? We begin our service on page 25. The service will be conducted in a mixture of English and Hebrew. And as you can see, hopefully from the carefully prepared orders of service, a little later in the service, Lili's good friend, Antonia, and then Lili's daughter will be sharing some of their memories, their reflections. It is only the dust which returns to the dust as it was, but the spirit returns to God again, and in God's hand is the care of every soul. The world we inhabit is a corridor to the world beyond. We prepare ourselves in the corridor to enter God's presence, who is our informer, who knows our sorrows and our labor. Faithful is God to give us the reward of our good deeds. God redeems us from destruction and leads us in the way of everlasting life. On page 26, Psalm 23, arguably the best known of the Bible's 150 Psalms. It speaks about the valley of the shadow of death. So mother gives us life and teaches us how to. She gives us love and teaches us how to. lose a mother, you're immersed in shadow, in darkness. But the psalmist walks out of the shadow to once again embrace life and love. And surely Lili's own personal example of walking out of the deep dark shadow of the shore of confidence and embrace life, sanctify life, is an example. Please do join me in reading Psalm 23. God is my shepherd, I shall not want. In green fields thou lettest me, leading me by quiet streams, guiding me about the truth that is taught me. Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear not. For you are my side. Your rod and staff, they comfort me. You spread a table before me in front of my enemies. You soothe my heavy Lord. My cup runs over. Surely goodness and mercy seek me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of God. On page 30, in this particular Psalm 121, you will see in English the word guardian repeated again and again, the translation of the word shomer. And maybe there may have been many times during the war when Lili felt God had provided her with a shomer, with a guardian, often in the guise of righteous non-Jews, German, Ukrainian, Polish. Esainaya Eharim Me'ayin Yadu Ezri Me'im Adonai Yosei Shamayim Ba'aretz. Al Yitei Lamot Rablecha, Al Yanum Shomecha. Hinei Lo Yanum V'lo Yishan Shomer Yisrael. Adonai Shomecha. Adonai Tzilcha Yad Yaminecha. Yomam Hashemesh Lo Yakecha V'yareach Alai. Adonai Yishmorcha Mikol Ra Yishmor Et Nafshecha. Adonai Yishmor Et Tzidcha Recha. Me'ata V'Adolam. At this point, I would like to call upon Lili's dear friend, Anthony Lishak, to share his memories of Lili.
On the 29th of March 1942, Lili's 16th birthday, she found herself floating along the Thames on the deck of a passenger ship, commissioned by Rabbi Solomon Schoenfeld as part of his drive to liberate as many Jewish child survivors of the Shoah from Poland as possible. Like the other teenagers on board, Lili had been charged with looking after the younger members of the group, and as they fast approached Tower Bridge, a group of terrified small children huddled behind her, some grabbing her hand, convinced the ship was about to crash. Actually, Lili shared their sense of panic because you'd never have known it. She had learned over the previous 7 years never to show fear. Lili was an exceptionally bright, independent-minded child. She had inherited her father's adventurous spirit and adored their skiing excursions to Zakopane, where he frequently coaxed her towards the precarious off-piste slopes, urging her to be bold, never to be afraid of pushing the boundaries. From very early on, Lili learned the importance of remaining clear-headed in the face of danger. Caught in the pincer of the dual German-Russian invasion of Poland, Lili's family traveled east from their beloved Krakow to find refuge with her maternal grandparents in Lvov, the village of present-day Ukraine, where Lili was born. They were part of a migration that doubled the size of the Bob's Jewish community to a quarter of a million. Although Jews were forced to endure huge deprivations under Soviet rule, it was when the German occupation began in the summer of 41, the idyllic life with her brother Uriel and parents Philip and Sasha was so brutally shattered. Throughout the following year, Lili witnessed the depraved depths to which humanity could sink. The grandfather was randomly shot in the streets, but the father and brother taken the Galgets, and Lili, like every child who bore witness and survived, had her childhood cruelly stolen. After her grandmother's tragic death, amidst the chaos and carnage of the Lvov ghetto, there was only Lili and her mother left. Desperate not to lose a second child, Sasha made the courageous decision to reach out to a total stranger for help. Indicative of the sixth sense resourcefulness that enabled them to navigate the perils of the next 2 years, she chose wisely. This German civil employee miraculously agreed to offer them shelter instantly, putting her own life on the line. There is not the time, and this is not the place, to fully detail the extraordinary path of Lili and her mother's lives followed before the Great Army re-entered the Lvov in July 44. Accounts of the remarkable individuals whose courage and compassion enabled her and her mother to survive, Irmgard Wiet, Max Kohl, Metropolitan Shetsky, and Rabbi Solomon Schonfield appear in the order of service handout, as I can assure you, Lili would have insisted on. Suffice to say that whereas many children, hidden children, endured extreme physical privation, never knowing whether their protectors would turn on them or turn them in, Lili's confinement, though fraught with danger, was underpinned by people she could trust. Perhaps that's why she was able to find the strength to rise above trauma and emerge with the positive zest for life that made her the apple of her father's eye still intact. Lili knew only too well the destructiveness blind hatred. It was the courageous selflessness of those people who Lili often referred to as her extraordinary, ordinary people that enabled her to retain faith in the power of love. And so, as Howard Bridge loomed ever larger when the arms of its drawbridge miraculously rose, welcoming the bemused travellers to their new home, Lili was able to assure the young companions that everything would be fine, and they believed her. And when a horde of journalists rushed on board, eager to capture the moment, she continued to calm the startled young children in an unfamiliar land on a strange ship surrounded by people who spoke a peculiar language. Lili told them everything would be fine, so they believed her. I had to stay positive, she once told me. What else could I do? So I kept smiling. I was happy they were. If you're looking for something that captures the spirit of Lili Pohlmann, that's it. Even as a 16-year-old, separated from her mother for who knew how long, other people came first. There is archive footage actually filmed in the hospital that Rabbi Schonfield set up for these children. Teenage Lili is there in the dining room, beaming at the camera, dashing from table to table with copious bowls of soup, serving others. Lili may have left Poland shores in 1946, but she always carried a deep affection for the country of her birth. All over her flat are memories of her beloved Prague and the many friends she has there. These are my people, she would exclaim. I know the high esteem in which she's held in Poland and particularly in her hometown, and that her loss is deeply mourned there. I regret that we never got to realize our plans of returning together. She longed to show me the streets of her childhood, the beautiful boulevards of Planté Park, and her pride and joy of the Jewish Cultural Center she helped to found. A deep love of Polish culture and the Polish language was embedded in her soul, but it was a chance meeting in Warsaw in the mid-90s that sparked the biggest love affair she had with that country. On reflection, it seems destined that Lili Pohlmann and the Iranian Center was part of the process. While Lili was being hidden in Lvov, 250 miles away, Irene was risking her life in the tightest riddled streets of the Warsaw ghetto to save the lives of hundreds of other Lilis. It's fair to say that when this former hidden child, who defied the odds to survive and lead a full and vibrant life, encountered this monumentally significant figure, it changed her life. It was love at first sight, is how she usually described it. A passion was ignited in Lili to share the story of this remarkable woman as widely as possible, a mission to a large extent that defined her life from then on. They spoke on the phone practically every day for the rest of Irene's life. Lili watched her tried as ever more people learned of what her friend had done and the sacrifices she made. As recently as 3 months ago, when the statue was unveiled of this iconic wrestler, Lili led tributes to her legacy. I urge you to seek out Lili's interview on YouTube at Marta Pohlmann. I was only lucky enough to enter Lili's orbit relatively late in her life. I was introduced to her remarkable mother through Lili's numerous recollections, and I grew to know Peter through so many affectionate anecdotes. Lili surrounded herself with memories. Every surface of her flat, the home of over 50 years, carried a photo, newspaper cutting, poster, or concert program, each capable of transporting her back in time, journeys that I was so fortunate to have been able to join her on. Sometimes we would return to her childhood in Krakow with her most treasured possession, the photo taken in Planté of her and her parents and her beloved guru, the only one who exists to look for together. But just as frequently, she would fell over pictures of her darling Karen and her 3 beautiful grandchildren, but nothing gave Lili more nuts than sharing the latest video of her great-grandson Asher. I can't express how delighted I was 6 months ago to be able to start swapping my own grandchild photos with her. Look at us, she explained, 2 old alpaca grandparents. But the strongest memories I have of my friend are from our school visits. Few things in life were more important to her than imparting a message of hope and tolerance to children and teenagers. I consider it to be the privilege of my life to have been able to sit beside her as her mesmerizing charm gradually drew her audience skin. It was both delightful and inspiring to watch the widening eyes and gaping mouths of both pupils and teachers as the uniqueness of this person that they were meeting slowly dawned on. And when she finished, Lili told them everything will be fine, and they believed her. Lili left her mark, as we've heard, quite literally on the wall of remembrance outside this building in the plaques she dedicated to her personal heroes. Her story has been preserved in books and on film, and her deeds have been widely honored. Most notably in Poland with the Commander's Cross of Pohlmann as a tutor, and in the UK with an MBE. But her greatest legacy lives on in the hearts of all who met her. It's really quite incalculable. Lili's magic touched even those who had the briefest of encounters with her. I lost count of the number of times People would approach her with wide-eyed reverence and declare how profoundly they were affected by meeting her 5, 10, or even 20 years earlier. Lili, I will miss our conversations, your apple pies, the colourful daniels, your wisdom, your humour, and your friendship. I carried with me a final image from a few weeks ago in hospital when a nurse came into your room to scold me for disturbing the rest of the ward with the over-the-top, topple-tibia impersonation I was amusing you with. You were hysterical. It was such a pleasure to see you laugh. I will finish, as I know you would want me to, with your favourite quote from Maria, who spoke for you when she said, "So long as I have an iota of energy in my body, I shall declare that only good is supreme. It must be striven for at all costs and in the end must prevail." Amen.
I was saying to me that your tears were as eloquent as your words in your really wonderful warm tribute today. We continue on page 35. Top of page 36. As a father is tender to his children, so you, God, will be tender to us. You guard us when we go out and when we come in. In the shadow of your wings, you shelter us. Even darkness will not darken our spirit, for in your light we see light. God, bring us peace, and may your faithfulness give our spirits strength. Support us, God, when we're silent with grief. Comfort us when we're bent down with sorrow. Help us as we bear the weight of ours. God, our rock and our redeemer, give us strength. Many here had the zechut, the privilege, the joy of knowing Lili and calling her a friend, but it is her daughter Karen who knew her best and loved her most, and I'm pleased that Karen wants to share some words with us.
God, I'm a short person, this is really hard. I just very briefly off what I wrote is I want to say thank you, Anthony, for what he had to say. We often talk in the States about the dash are the 2 days, the date you were born with and the date that you die, and what you do in the middle, how you fill in the dash, is what counts in your life. And I think Anthony gave the most beautiful picture of my mother. So, greetings to everybody, and thank you so much for coming. You know what's the saddest thing today, God? What the saddest thing about today is that Mommy would be fist-thumpingly mad that she can't be here, front and center, for a gathering dedicated to honoring her, Lili Pohlmann, MBE, mother beyond extraordinary. As always, however, Lili had something to say, and she still does. So I'm giving her the first word. I share Mommy's last wish, written for each and every one of you, wherever you might find yourselves today. And it was entitled My Wish. My life was full, loving, and interesting, and active. I should like all of my nearest and dearest, and all of my dear friends to gain comfort from the many warm memories they may have attained in my life, rather than to mourn my passing. These words were meticulously created and edited by Lili herself. All things considered, the brevity and succinctness of her personal message was rather out of character for her, don't you think? While Lili may have had the first word, today I am definitely having the final and last word. As you all know her as a friend, I had the unique privilege of having a front row seat and access to her life, in front of, but most especially behind closed doors, when we were home together alone. My mother was so many things, so very complex. How I adored being alone with her, and just having that energy focused on me. When I think about describing her, the most overwhelming words that come to mind in my heart was her incredible passion and zest for life. She was a force of nature not to be trifled with. I've received many wonderful tributes, but Peter Pohlmann said it so beautifully. She was a one-off, a woman with a gigantic heart who could drive you mad, but also always in a good cause. She was hugely courageous, extraordinarily generous, elegant, witty, self-deprecating, indomitable, tireless, and always a fighter. She would move mountains for those she loved and cared for, and was a trenchant critic of those who let her down. Her compassion and humor inspired countless friends and admirers, and she would leave a huge hole in the ranks of those who cherished her beliefs. Mommy consumed life with her infectious passion that rendered one helpless, and few were powerless to resist, especially when she targeted you with her utterly unique and exotic charm. To all of you, she was first and foremost an incredibly seductive storyteller. After all, it's how she engaged each one of you in the first place and why you're here. She could weave the most intricately crafted tapestry out of a single simple incident, but that was not only in technicolor, but was also a totally sensory experience, including smell and touch. This was the incredible force majeure that left an indelible tattoo, Lili, on your memories of her. What I want to do to bring you inside the woman behind the activism, the woman behind, behind the woman who was behind great love of her life, Peter's life for over 40 years. The woman who lost her beloved husband, Eric. The woman who escaped from an abusive marriage, saving us from a violent alcoholic. The child whose quick instincts saved her mother and herself during the war. Mommy was highly intuitive and extremely telepathic, a gift she shared with my grandmother, Lili, a necessity developed during the war. When it came to the two of us, well, we took it to a whole other stratosphere. Our telepathic connection really developed in full during the years of expensive international landline phone calls, when I moved to Florida in 1980. If I wanted to speak to Mommy, I just had to think about her and was absolutely guaranteed a call within a matter of hours. This was useful as an adult, but caused me some very serious issues when I was a healthy teenager growing up in London. I had to consciously not think of something or block it so that she would not pick up on my shenanigans. In recent years, our airmail, our emails, or FaceTimes would literally overlap and cross each other simultaneously. This gift and curse I now share with my three children, Corey, Daniel, and most especially Kaylin. Whenever Lili would excitedly ask, "You'll never guess who I heard from today or who I met," I pull the most obscure name out of my hat, and much to both of our great amusement, I'd be right. Once terminally diagnosed, a desire to die and to connect with me in these past few weeks truly demonstrated just how powerful and brave her spirit really was. Having been robbed of her beautiful, unforgettable voice, she had to fight for another way to communicate her thoughts and wishes to me and all present. And boy, did she ever. Never was my ability to receive and translate her thoughts more critical as I became her voice in the hospital, and it got honed at a staggering speed. The night before she died, I had been discussing the music that we'd be playing today. Her sole lifetime wish was to have the overture to the Rosenthal played at her funeral. And we played it. That night, I was in my bed and I heard something fall as I stayed in Lily's flat. I investigated, but to no avail. Returning from the bathroom, I saw that her 40-year-old Royal Opera House Rosenkavalier poster that had been stuck with her favorite blue tag on the living room door had detached itself, lying in a crumpled mess on the floor. There she was, confirming my selection and thanking me for remembering. I immediately contacted my children to say Grandma gave me a huge message and time was drawing near. She passed away the next morning. Mommy and I had an incredibly unusually close relationship, even by all my therapist's accounts. We FaceTimed every day once she learned how, and all of my friends knew that I was always busy at 6 o'clock for our nightly combos. Lockdown was incredibly hard on her, being removed from people that she loved so much, so it propelled the children and I to fill the loneliness gap and try and stop her incessant watching of news. We discussed everything, often arguing about parties, my hair, television programs, the news, my clothes, what my kids were doing, if people were wearing face masks around me, it went on and on. As Joan Rivers once said when someone commented on her heated family discussions, we're not arguing, we're Jewish. Were we ever Jewish? I want to thank you, my darling Mummy, for gracing this planet for 91 incredible years and for sharing 64 of those with me. We definitely chose each other in some predestined fated universe to learn, to teach, and to grow from each other. We had a fantastic journey filled with huge love, passion, adventures, via travels, heartache, music from klezmer to opera, all genres in between. Theatres, classic Fred and Ginger Roger movies, as well as the hysterical Billy Wilder ones that she introduced me to. And more recently, the Bond franchise, politics, activism, commitment, forgiveness, and some grudges, devotion, loyalty, opinions, and above all, always laughter and fun. Corey, Daniel, Caitlin, and Asher were especially blessed to call this exotic creature their grand and great grandmother. Although an ocean apart, her huge love reached right across, straight into their hearts, which she likewise filled with her ethos and opinions and how she relished in their successes and happinesses. All that power has now transcended into a formidable guardian angel status. An exquisite light has been extinguished, and a brilliant star, Stern, has now joined the heavens, illuminating us all with its bright twinkle. Mummy passed away on September 15th after a short and very cruel illness, which robbed her of her speech and her fierce independence and the need to control everything. It behooved me to maintain the last of her dignity to the very end. Lili died on the holiest of holy nights in the Jewish tradition, the Sabbath of all Sabbaths, Yom Kippur. It is said that the righteous transcend on this night. How very appropriate that Hashem reached out to her, inviting her to become part of the very righteous for whom she so fiercely fought and continued to fight with Yad Vashem until her dying days. May her mission to spread the importance of kindness, compassion, and forgiveness, and never to condemn an entire nation for the acts of the few. May we never forget the extraordinary, ordinary people who touched and remain in our lives. They are all around us here to teach us. May we always have laughter and beautiful music surrounding us. Mummy, while I say goodbye to your physical remains, I know your spirit is bigger and more powerful than ever. Your presence will be felt in the warmth of the sun, the bloom of the flowers, the rain, the wind, but most of all at night when I look up at all the amazing stars that you have now joined. Thank you for all the beautiful memories, for your infectious enthusiasm, and for the great joy you brought into my life, our children, and your friends. Thank you for your unconditional love and care. Never ever is there a doubt that your life was for a great blessing. My heart will be with you forever and ever, because love never dies. God bless you, Mommy.
Wow. Thank you, Karen. It takes enormous courage to stand in front of friends, family watching online and eulogize one's mother. But I would say that was not so much a eulogy, more beautiful. And you succeeded very much. We continue on page 37. Ilaha Ma'amin Vanessa, Mahadonai Imam El Topani, the Adonai Chayas of Me'achole. Adonai Yeshua, Mervinus, the Dut, Adonai Natan, Adonai Natas, Yehishem Adonai Lora. God swallows up death forever, wipes away tears from every face, and takes the pain and sorrow from every heart. For salvation comes from God, whose power of redemption is vast. God has given, and God has taken away. May God's name be blessed. We're now going to move into the heart of the cemetery. It's really just a few yards walk to take Lili to her final resting place. The service will conclude at the graveside, so please do take your belongings with you.
your hands to the souls of the living and spirits of all creatures. We turn to you in grief, for your mercy is always with us, and your love and good support us. Though we walk through the valley of the shadow of death, we fear no harm. It is said, as the mother comforts her child, so will I myself comfort you. Never again shall your sun set, nor the moon withdraw its light, because God shall be your everlasting light. God full of compassion, grant perfect rest beneath the shelter of your wings. With the holy and pure on high shines the lights of heaven. With Pohlmann who's gone to her everlasting. Source of mercy, cover Lili in the shelter of your wings forever, and bind her soul into the gathering of soul be free in its place of rest. With the cover words and counsel to the end. Praise God for life. Praise God for life. I remember the words of the coming Friends, if you wish, please do help to there is also some roots here.
Thank